I broke it. Hello, everybody. I wanted to watch this video and review it and watch it with you because it brought up a very fascinating concept. I'm going to love it, critique it, and I want you to understand there is no ill will toward this person because I love his videos. Very cool conceptual wise. I've learned a lot from him. But I had a few things I wanted to add. And I think this would be a really good opportunity for growth and stuff. And I love going over stuff like this so that when people see an idea, like a good idea, they get multiple perspectives on it and they can decide what makes sense and what's logical and what's reasonable and all that stuff. So without further ado, let's get started. I'm going to be pausing this a lot because I had a lot of thoughts on it.
This is Ellie. This is Oscar. Ellie is a vampire. Oscar, for now, we'll just call him a normal boy with a really, really bad bully problem. The story begins when Ellie moves into his apartment complex and they start to become friends, which is a rare, important thing for her. Ellie can't live a normal life because she isn't a normal girl. So finding someone like Oscar matters a lot. At least now she has him. At least Oscar seems to understand. This is the basic setup for the movie Let the Right One In, which is probably one of my favorite films ever. There is a lot to this story. A lot of novel approaches to questions about morality and humanity. But Ellie, our remorseful little vampire, she's nothing new, really. Just one in a long line of vampires who regret being vampires. Actually, you kind of see this a lot with monsters. Aren't monsters definitionally supposed to break the rules? Why should a vampire care if you give it permission to enter? Why should a fairy honor its contract? Why should a murderous slasher villain seem to take moral issue with premarital sex? It's almost like there's more at play here than just biology and circumstances. Like these stories are trying to say something. Ellie, who can hardly stand to hurt anyone, is the monster and Let the Right One In. Meanwhile, Oscar, our normal little boy, has vivid fantasies about murdering his bullies. Sometimes, in a weird way, despite being literal monsters, it's almost like the monsters in these stories respect the rules more than people do. Like any widespread cultural concept, the rules that monsters have to follow will vary from storyteller to storyteller. The specifics are different, the stakes are higher or lower, taken more or less seriously. Take the vampire entering a house thing, for instance. Sometimes the rules are just there for world building, or to add tension to a plotline, or they're more of an unfortunate biological quirk than an actual rule. In most cases, it's not like vampires avoid sunlight because some doctrine commands it. They just don't want to burst into flames or whatever. That seems like less of a rule to me and more like, survival. But whatever form it takes, it's interesting, right? I think it means something that humans have sort of attached themselves to this idea of a rule-following monster at all. It strikes me less as a world-building gimmick and more as, an accidental method of reflecting on yourselves. Like, humans are usually the good guys, right? They do all the good, righteous stuff while the monsters lurk around on the outskirts of town doing all the bad, evil stuff. So, when you start seeing monsters acting righteously, what are you supposed to do with that?
Okay. So, this is where it started my gears turning. Why are humans righteous? There is a belief among people, and I'm not entirely sure why, that humans are generally good. I think there's more than plenty evidence that people are not generally good. I think that we can deceive ourselves. We can have a fictitious version of people in our head. For instance, I have had some people that I really looked up to, both celebrity-wise and personal-wise. And then when I actually got to know them, they weren't as pure as I thought they were. And even the people who I thought were some of the most pure among us, there's always a potential for evil. Now, this is not Minority Report. I'm not saying I am predicting every crime that people are doing. But I am saying that people in general have something in them that causes them to be monsters. And the reason why I think of this, and I'm an optimist, so I'm not just like being a pessimist and be like, oh, well, people are the worst, and I've met a lot of bad people. What it comes down to is your standard. For instance, he goes on to talk about social contracts, which is very important, and I'll cover more of that later. But what's interesting is when most people think that humans are generally good, what they usually mean is something like, oh, this person hasn't murdered anybody. And that's a very, very low bar. What does that mean for the rest of your life? You can have someone, and I know for a fact that people don't like this, is because just like that, that woman who was in Harry Potter that no one liked. What was the name of the woman in Harry Potter no one liked? Dolores Umbridge. There we go. My point being is that when you take something terrible and horrible and you say that is the mark, that is how we know when we've hit monstrous level of morality or personhood. That's too easy. Allowing yourself to deceive yourself and to say, I am a good person because I have not done this terrible, horrible thing. What about all these smaller, terrible things you've done? What about your natural inclination, your natural desire to do all of these things that are negative? People don't like people throwing trash. And then the only reason why it's a small negative thing right now is, especially in my state, people clean up after them. And it keeps the trash level down. Because they're like, oh, well, it's not a big deal. Other people are now cleaning up litter where there's just trash being dumped. Just because we have someone willing to take care of the problem for us does not mean what we're doing is not evil. And I know people think like, what? Throwing litter out the window? Like, that's not evil. It's like, but you're taking your responsibility and you're shoving it onto someone else. Maybe it doesn't feel violent, but it's still evil in the sense that you are twisting the world around you. And I'm bringing the bar of morality and evilness up because when you do that, you go from looking in the mirror and seeing this pure, like, flawless person to all of a sudden you see all these flaws about you and you're like, oh, I'm not as good as I thought I was. Just because you haven't murdered somebody, you haven't hurt somebody, you haven't, like, all this stuff, doesn't mean you're a good person. It means you're excusing the bad stuff that you do. Or you're not even aware that it's bad. I've met people who do bad things and they just don't know that it's bad. Like, they don't understand it. And that's okay. Like, I'm not expecting everyone from every walk of life to understand every sense of moral compass and moral code. Like, why would I expect that of people who haven't been taught? That doesn't mean that I should lessen my expectation of people and what I want them and what I hope they understand is the correct thing to do. How are we supposed to stay unified? How are we supposed to solve these problems when we can't even agree on what the problem is? And that's why it's important. People who break laws, they are not interested in the rules. And I'm going to stop now because I'm jumping ahead of myself. But I just wanted to emphasize that point of the reason why this is less confusing than you think is because people are not as good as you think. There's plenty of examples of people, even normal people, who are capable of terrible, horrible things. It means that your bar of standard is so low that you can easily step over it. Like, oh, well, I'm a good person. But if you start adding to the list of the things that you shouldn't be doing, right? That bar is higher. that list of things allows you to perfect yourself more and more and more. Why wouldn't you add good moral principles to your life that would better your life, that will help people around you and help yourself? Like, why wouldn't you do that? Don't settle for down here. Like, aim for up here. And you'll be a much better person than you would have if you just settled for down here. Let's continue.
Acting righteously. What are you supposed to do with that?
What does it mean when monsters act righteously? Well, let's put aside the fact that a lot of the monsters he talks about aren't really in reality. You have to define your terms, right? Define what a monster is, define what a human is, which is what I just tried to do. Define a human not as like all good, but define what righteous means, and define what evil means. And that's what we'll do throughout this video.
A social contract is an unspoken set of rules that everyone in a society has agreed to follow if they want that society to function.
Correct.
A lot of it is pretty common sense. Don't steal, don't murder, etc. Like I said, it's an agreement. It's often encoded as law and enforced, yes. You don't want to break the contract because you don't want to get sent to jail or the stocks or thrown into a volcano. But really, for most people, you agree to the contract because you don't want society to fall apart around you.
Mm-hmm.
Enforcement isn't the sole thing holding society together.
Correct.
Agreement is. There's also a lot of potential for abuse in that.
Yep.
I mean, what if someone decides that they don't agree? That they just don't care about your social contract? There's not that much you can do without breaking the contract yourself.
So that was an interesting point that he made. That depends on how you define the terms, correct? So if you have someone like that who decides to break the contract of peace, like very easy one, as we said, I will not murder. It's not easy for some people, unfortunately. But what happens when you have someone who is not as peaceful as you? A pacifist can only exist when there is no evil around you. We live in a protected society, which means that this society has an overarching set of laws and a police force that will enforce it for you. Because what happens when someone breaks the law or does something bad to you? You call the police. Or at least that's how it's supposed to function. What do? They come with their equipment, with their training, with their weapons, and say, you are breaking the law, you need to stop doing that. And what happens if they keep doing it? They arrest them, right? Under force. This is why context is so important. If you're talking about a state, doesn't really matter what state, right? And they have laws, assuming the laws are moral, and it's harder to tell that. Then you want the police people, especially if they're not corrupt, and there's a lot of elements to this, to enforce those laws so you don't have to fear for your home. And we see a lot of cities nowadays, especially in America, where for whatever reason, and I'm not blaming anyone in particular, the laws are not being followed and the laws are not being enforced. At least not consistently. And a lot of people are afraid. And the social contract has been broken, which is why there are so many people who are angry. When someone like that makes a threat, right, they are not only forfeiting their right to the social contract, they are changing it. So you don't keep the social contract with someone who's broken it. If you say to someone, okay, we're not going to kill each other, and I'm glad we agree on that, because if you kill each other, not only are you shortening my lifespan, stealing all the love that could have happened, all of these lists of things. Once they break that contract, right, it is not up to you to continue to enforce it. Now, that doesn't mean that you blatantly become a vigilante and start killing everyone you suspect is that person, because then you become that monster as well, in a different form. But if someone is actively attacking people, right, you want to stop that bad force. The good people want to stop the bad people. And that's the important part. They are not breaking the social contract. They're just entering into a different one when they say, I want this bad person to stop, and I'm going to make them stop. You're kind of entering into the realm of frontier justice here. But not all, and I'm not encouraging any person to do anything bad. But morally, not all people who kill are bad. It's people who murder out of cold blood. You can kill someone out of self-defense. You can kill someone defending someone else. And the rule of when that's supposed to happen should be high. So, like, don't just draw a gun or draw a knife or raise your fists whenever you feel like it. Okay? That is how you become the guy on the right. There is a virtue called meekness. Meekness means you have a sword in your sheath, but you don't draw it. You are more wise about when you draw it, so that way you are not constantly threatening people. Because when you escalate, what happens? Someone who could have been de-escalated and convinced to stop or forced to stop now must be hurt or killed in order to make them stop, because they've upped the ante. So the whole point of this is the social contract is not broken when they've broken the social contract. A new one is entered that says we must stop this bad person. No matter what evil someone does, as soon as they do that evil, they are removing themselves from a peaceful, normal citizen and becoming a criminal. When someone is a criminal, it doesn't mean you should treat them inhumanely. It means you have to treat them differently because they are a danger. If someone, and there are differences between one-offs, which even the court system says, oh, you've only done this once, we're going to give you a lighter sentence because we don't think you're a danger to do it again. That's the thing. But still, that doesn't mean they don't give them a sentence. They treat it all fairly, they treat it all equally, and when someone is the danger, right, you have to deal with it. So, essentially, the people on the left are in a social contract not to murder, and the guy on the right broke that social contract and created a new one because he went from peaceful citizen to a criminal. And when you do that, you eliminate the need for the peaceful people to stay in that contract, because now they are forced to protect themselves and it is no longer the same situation, if that makes sense.
And that sort of leaves everyone who does adhere to the contract at the mercy of those who don't.
Exactly. So that's why the contract changes.
He clocks one of the kids in the side of the head with the pole, and it does some real damage. It's the first time Oscar has ever really fought back, because he always knew that he'd get in trouble. With his parents, with the school, his bullies would just get more agitated. Fighting back would just make things worse. And he makes his move. Then, surprise, surprise, he gets in trouble at school, his parents are upset, and it agitates his bullies even more.
So, what's interesting about this is I don't agree with, what was his name, Oscar? I don't agree with that blonde kid's decision to fantasize about murdering his bullies and to lash out in a very damaging way. But I do agree with people defending themselves. So if they actually, and I haven't seen this show, so I don't know what level of bullying is happening. I have heard a lot of success stories of people who defended themselves. Generally, I do agree that kids should defend themselves. Because if we teach kids not to defend themselves and they're just getting bullied, isn't that worse? Violence is the answer if it stops a bad thing from happening. Probably shouldn't put that on the internet. But I'm not saying drop a nuke on them. I'm saying, like, just meet their level and make them stop. Like, that's the only point.
But hey, at least he got one good whack in. Oscar has willingly broken the social contract, and in doing so, has edged away from humanity and towards the realm of monsters.
Now, the reason why I agree with this is because he indulged in the fantasy of killing. And then he tried to act out the violence. That is the realm of monsters. But if he's just defending himself, that's not monstrous. Oscar specifically, in this situation, is edging himself that way. But I think most students who stand up to bullies and fight back, I don't think they're edging toward monstrosity.
You can tell by the way people react to him. He's still a person, but his willingness to do this has made people regard him as less of one.
So that's technically true, but we have to start defining the people around him. What is their standard? So the school system has come up with a no exceptions kind of rule. So if there are two kids fighting, they punish both of them equally, which means that the bully is succeeding every time he gets the defender to punch him. Now, I can understand that you can't watch every kid every moment. It's hard to tell. So in order to stop it, you do like a uniform punishment. But unfortunately, I don't think it's working. If anything, it's gotten worse. And I'm not saying it's just because of that. I'm not naive. But if it was really a good solution, it's been decades, right? We should have seen some kind of curb by now. I don't think telling children not to defend themselves is the answer. That's how you get this. That is how you get this. Also, we need to define what people's levels of morality are, like the people around him. If the people around him are saying, oh, well, you shouldn't do any violence of any kind ever, why aren't you stopping the bullies? Why are you getting after him? Like, that is completely unfair and unjust. That kind of thing.
I think of this social contract as a sort of dividing wall between those in society and those outside of it. If you adhere to the contract, congratulations, you're a good human and you get to participate in civilization. If you don't...
Because, civilization is so nice.
Congratulations, you're a good human and you get to participate in civilization. If you don't, you're a monster and you have to go do scary monster things alone in the woods. You humans are affirmed in your humanity because you can look at the monsters on the other side of the dividing wall and say, I'm not like them. I'm good. Monsters show you who you are by reflecting your humanity back at you.
Exactly.
It comes from the Latin verb monstrare, to show or reveal. You can see the same root word in demonstrate. Monsters demonstrate the boundaries of what humanity understands.
And that's an interesting imagery. It says human, but he has not defined what human is, right? And I know we all naturally know mostly what humans comprise of. But if he's starting the whole conversation with humans are naturally good or righteous, then where does that put this? And also, I think it should be flipped. Like, I know for the point of this demonstration, he did a really good job, and I'm not nitpicking that. But humans should be in a box, and then monsters should be everything outside it, right? But I really like this. This is a cool concept. But then you have to define what a human is, and through the extrapolation, figure out what a monster is, and if they overlap. Because I don't think that line is as solid as you might think. Can humans be monsters? What are their parameters? Is the society that's not allowing it, are they correct? Like, what do you compare it to? What is your standard? Where is it coming from?
Anything outside of humanity's understanding is the realm of monsters. But we know that she's a monster because we see her luring people to their deaths and draining their blood. That's something only a monster would do. When we see her caretaker doing it for her, even though he isn't literally a vampire, we also recognize him as a monster because he's behaving like one.
So this is very interesting. The reason why this entire moral questioning is starting to break apart is because he is using a fictitious being, a vampire, to describe what a monster is. But we don't actually have those that we can study in real life. If we don't have the vampire, like what he just said, is that she did monstrous things, but she was sad about it, right? So the sad part is supposed to be her humanity, and the drinking the blood part is supposed to be the monster. But we don't have people who actually have that situation. If there is cannibalism like that, right, in the real world, it's because of how their society was raising them, or it's because they've gone a little crazy. This situation is manufactured. And I'm not blaming him specifically for that. He's doing a good job taking a monster that everyone knows, and I'm sure that's why he used it. And then he goes on to explain that he's being a monster. And actually, he was correct there. This guy, draining people, is being a monster. Because he is stealing life from other people. But this part is the evil part, and we know that Because if this were to happen in real life, he would be in jail. And even if it's a corrupt city-state who doesn't throw people like that in jail, he's still creating massive negative harm.
He doesn't actually have to drink the blood. It's enough for him to have it on his hands.
Exactly.
In the real world, monsters don't always look like monsters. Usually they're just people who abuse the social contract. You know, murderers, child abusers, people who comment on YouTube videos without actually watching them, that kind of thing. These are people who have decided that they'd rather have the freedom to cause harm than align themselves with the society that wouldn't allow them to. Consequences be damned. Which, by our earlier definition, would clearly make them monsters.
And this was interesting too. So the definition of a monster is someone who breaks a social contract regardless of the consequences. But then you have to figure out where the social contract came from, why it came around, is it useful, is there a net benefit because of it? A good example is in America, there's been a social contract that's been slowly written without anyone talking about it, about being tolerant and allowing things to just happen. But the problem is, it's been a massive negative effect where instead of confronting people who are breaking other social contracts, we will let them skate by for free because of this bigger one. Then you have a stacking of social contracts and which one's more important. Like, maybe they can't help it. Well, has anyone tried to make him accountable so he can help it? It really, you have to go deeper on all of these contracts in order to understand who's the monster and who's not. That the person being tolerant of the monsters is a monster in themselves. It should be the same thing in society. If you watch someone litter and don't try to stop them, if you watch someone abuse someone and don't try to stop them, doing whatever you can, whatever the circumstance is, and I hope you're discerning enough to know when it's wise and when it's not. Hopefully, people will think deeply about this. I really hope so, but if they don't, they could end up with several wrong conclusions that will mess up their moral compass.
Which, by our earlier definition, would clearly make them monsters. I don't think many people would argue with that. It's pretty intuitive stuff to me. There's some gray area with what you might consider abuse of the social contract. Maybe sometimes it needs to be broken. But we're not going there just yet.
That's fair. I will go there. This is a really, really important point. Because if a social contract happens, right? Then, and not everyone agrees with it, or even if most people agree with it and only 10% don't, it might be important for that 10% to push. We saw this really good example when slavery was abolished, but people were still racist. Social contracts were trying to be changed, and through nonviolent means for the most part, and all this stuff, and it worked. And I feel like it came to the head in the 90s, where people would say, I don't care about your color, I don't see color, and I love everyone equally. And it was a success. And I don't know what happened since then. A lot of political stuff. When you need to remove a contract or figure it out, that's incredibly important because it keeps the balance. It's also your measure of what is harm. Because, for instance, if you start a contract and makes everyone really uncomfortable, that's a good thing. It's supposed to be uncomfortable because it's change. So if you're uncomfortable with something, you shouldn't stop something just because you're uncomfortable. You should be doing it because it's the right thing to do.
For now, I think it's enough to say that the real monsters are the people who reject their place among people. Who...
Technically true. For some reason, I was thinking of an exception of physically, when someone goes out to the woods and lives alone for a while. But if you're thinking morally, it depends on the people group. It depends on what they're doing.
Defy the social contract. Sometimes, though, you find people described or treated as monsters who don't really fit that description, who haven't done anything to breach the social contract.
Completely agree. There have been a lot of people, a massive amount. It's a psychological thing where people have a really hard time accepting outsiders. What it comes down to is, what is your standard? Right? Because if your standard is, I'm a good person, I didn't murder. Okay, what about all the thieves? Oh, okay, I'm a good person because I didn't murder and I didn't steal. What about all the gossipers who are ruining people's lives? Oh, okay. Well, I don't really. Maybe I might gossip a little bit, but like I don't hurt anyone. You don't know that. It's the problem with doing things that are wrong is you don't know the full weight of what you're doing. You don't understand me. It's like I don't have to understand you. I'm going based upon the standard, right? I'm going based upon what we should all agree on. Things that produce a lot less negative or produce positives. That's what I'm going for.
People who just have some quality that is deemed monstrous and earns them outsider status through no fault of their own. They're just the wrong kind of person.
I don't know. I'm trying to think of a people group. I guess you could do like with the Jews, that's happened with them, and then the Uyghurs. There's been a lot of Holocaust, but I don't know if there's been a direct cause to any of them. Definitely there's no like viable cause for a genocide or anything like that. That's unacceptable. But it's just fascinating. I'm trying to think of what situation he's thinking of. Is he thinking of like Salem witch trials? That's fascinating. I want to think about that more.
If humanity decides something is weird or wrong, monsters will have those traits. How many monsters in folklore are just women who seduced men, or men who aren't masculine enough? Good, respectable, tidy, familiar, understandable, agreeable, rule-following humans are the in-group.
Agreed. What does it mean to be the in-group? What are the standards? And just because someone sees themselves as righteous or good, or they follow the rules, what are the rules? Are the rules important? Like, are they functioning? Are they helping?
My point is, this isn't just a matter of violating the social contract. Monstrousness is incredibly subjective and sometimes based on very little outside of familiarity and personal taste. And I do find it a little disturbing that this othering is so normal. That someone can so arbitrarily just decide that you're a monster, put you on the other side of that invisible wall with the rest of the monsters, whether you've done anything abusive or not.
I do agree with this because there have been a lot of people and families and groups and societies and you name it throughout history who get othered. Doesn't matter what religion, doesn't matter what society, everyone's done it. I don't fully know why, and maybe that's because in America, like we look down on that kind of thing. We still do that in our personal lives. But othering is a very fascinating psychological thing where it's surprising what people will cling to. It really comes from a mindset, right? And this is what I've learned coming from America. It's all about mindset. Because my mindset is, I don't care about someone's culture or religion or color or where they're from. I want to treat them equally, right? I want to treat them with respect. How quickly would that solve so many problems? Then we talk about the social contract thing before, where someone else breaks that social contract, and now you are stuck with it. I will respect you even though you hate me.
And if anyone can be a monster, if this effect can be so easily applied, how do we tell with any certainty who the actual monsters are? What does the dividing line between the in-group and the out-group even mean? Who belongs where and why?
And this is why I made this video. When he said this, I was like, this is really fascinating. Where's the line? Right? Where do we decide who's a monster and who's not? How do we decide? By what metric? By what rules? By what standard? Because as soon as we know what the outline of a monster is, we can tell what laws to use. We can tell what to protect against. So how do you know when you're othering and when you're protecting? When I was in college, when I were to hug or think about a gay person, there was like this underlying feeling of disgust. And I don't know where it was coming from. And it started to bother me, and I felt convicted. And I'm pretty sure it was the Holy Spirit who said, that's not from me. And that was a tough moment for me, because I had to start figuring out where it was coming from, how I picked it up, why it was happening in the first place, and how to get rid of it. I definitely changed my mindset from being concerned to including them in my social contract of respect, right? Because it shouldn't be like that. You shouldn't other people. And that was a really big learning moment for me when I was like, why do I feel this natural repulsion that's definitely not from God? Because he loves everyone. So why am I feeling this way? Because I didn't learn it from him. So I had to learn it from somewhere else. Found out that I really didn't mind them that much. And that I shouldn't have been thinking like that to begin with. That mindset of love, it doesn't mean you are agreeing with what all of the others are doing. It means that you are doing what you should be doing, even if the other people aren't willing to do it. And there's a thing of integrity in that.
If the goalposts shift, if the rules are subjective and
what are the goalposts? What are the rules?
Based on the whims of whoever makes them, there's no guarantee they won't evolve.
Exactly. Now, a lot of people are trying to make laws that don't include the Constitution, and that's a problem because the Constitution is what we're supposed to be grounded on. And they want to change it for either their benefit, because they don't have a social contract they want to push, that kind of stuff.
Things that were once monstrous may become more acceptable, and things that were once totally fine may eventually become a problem. No definition of what makes a human or a monster will ever be entirely objective or immutable.
That is where I strongly disagree with him. You have to have objective rules. If you don't, it will end very badly. You're talking about relativism. What that is basically everything is true or everything is fine, you should just go along. Even the bar that's this low, right? Don't murder people. Can you say to them, don't do that, and why? You can say, oh, it hurts my feelings, or you took someone from me and I dearly love them. They don't care. Their upbringing did not include the valuing of life, which should be one of our main ideas and main moral statements. Life is valuable. In America today, many people don't think life is valuable. They don't. They see life as a nuisance, as a necessary evil. Life is a wonderful gift. It is potential. It is free will. If you did not have life, you wouldn't even have the ability to decide that you didn't like it. The potential is the beauty of it. Because you can be anything you want to be. You can be amazing. Now, you might have trouble figuring out where the lines are of what's good and what's bad. But you can choose to be good any day you wanted to. And you can say, oh, well, I have this problem, or I have this mental illness, or I have this family member who's always in my way. Be kind to them. You might hate hearing that, and you might think it's impossible to follow. Do it anyway. Because what possible benefit are you getting from your anger, from your hate? It might feel good, it might feel justified, but you're poisoning yourself. Bitterness is like taking a poison to yourself and expecting the other person to die. Hanging on to negative things will destroy you. Pursue the good thing and pursue life. Life should be a main tenet of our moral structure. We want people to live. We want people to enjoy their life. We want people to take actions and build businesses that encourage life, that protect life. Like the Constitution says, pursuit of the life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Because it's important. If you don't have life, the only other option is death. And so that's the kind of thing we need to think about, right? Is like, what are our standards? How do we remake ourselves? How do we make ourselves better people? Because you can't control what other people are doing or how they act. You can control what you do. You can make yourself more disciplined, more loving, more happy. And that doesn't make the other people you used to be really annoyed with go away. But then you have to define what a good person is.
Maybe it's possible for monsters to earn their humanity. A monster plays by humanity's rules. Can it become more human?
what's a monster? If it's a murderer who's been killing people and they don't want to stop, no. If it's a murderer who wants redemption, it's possible. They still have to serve out their consequence. What is a human? Right? Ask these questions.
In Let the Right One In, we witness Ellie luring a man, killing him, and drinking his blood. And then we watch her sob, clearly regretting what she has to do in order to provide for herself. Meanwhile, Oscar fantasizes about killing his classmates. He wants this, but isn't powerful or brave enough to have it. Ellie shows more compassion, more humanity than Oscar does, despite her actions, but because of her very nature, she can never be human. Here's a question. How often do you see a monster decide that it's a monster?
This got me turning. I really like this concept. Here's the question. If it's a monster that realizes it's a monster, I mean, it can still decide to be a monster, but at that point it has decisions. And if it's human, then you're asking, what if a monster decides not to be a monster? Then are they a monster? And it depends on the context, right? If the context says they did a terrible, horrible thing, but they regret it and they didn't want to do it, then what was going on there, right?
I mean, surely now and then. I know there are monsters out there that embrace it, but the majority of the time, monster is a title given to you against your will.
There's actually been a lot of people in America who have been trying to, and this is fascinating to me, they've been trying to grab onto the term monster and say, I'm a monster, like I like all these spooky things. But as soon as a real monster enters their presence, all of that fantasy, all of that desire to be like that disappears. Because people can fantasize about it, they can embellish it, they can think it's so interesting and amazing and scary. But as soon as that real world horror film happens to you, it's not fun anymore.
Frankenstein's monster, as we so readily call him, wasn't created to act monstrously. He wasn't created with a penchant for violence or a desire to rampage through small towns. He was created as a blank slate. He was curious. He wanted to learn about this weird new world he'd been brought into. He wanted his creator to guide him. But because his creator failed to guide him, and the rest of humanity took one look at him and decided that he must be a monster, he started acting like one.
I like the concept because you're talking about something that's new to this world, that is exploring it. And you could quickly draw a line between Frankenstein's monster and a child. Kind of like being born into this world and interacting with the elements that basically hate him. Some children deal with this too. They're hated by their families. This is more applicable to the real world. It works, it functions. So I find that really fascinating.
Frustration and betrayal at society's rejection pushed him toward becoming exactly what was expected of him. Some monsters have this decision made for them and try to reject it. They think that if they can just act more human, the humans will accept them into their in-group. You see this in things like the vegetarian vampire trope, where vampires will find workarounds to avoid killing innocent humans for food. But despite their best efforts to avoid causing harm, they are still vampires.
I have noticed this in popular trends, especially with vampires, maybe werewolves, with all the shows and the books and everything, where they've taken the monstrosity out of the monster. And they've kind of like labeled these things that were monsters, and they've kept dialing it back to the point where they think they're blurring the line between human and monster, but they're just taking the monster out of the monster. And that's not impressive to me. That's just making a monster more human. Because what they're trying to do is make it relatable, make it interesting, like make these moral questions, but again, is it applicable to real life? You're not going to have people running around trying to drink the blood of other people. It could technically happen if someone goes crazy, but still, like, it's not really that a direct line to real life. Okay? And I'm not trying to be nitpicky, but I am. Think about how, like, why are we making monsters more and more friendly? Why is the line between black and white blurring? Or at least they think they're making it blur. Why is that desired? Wouldn't you want to know who the monsters are? Now, I actually am a fan of the trope, it's kind of a trope now, where vampires are trying to find peaceful ways to do it. I kind of like that. Why? Because it's more creative. I'm okay with the creativity. But oh, I'm a vampire and I can't help it. Whatever will I do? It's like, it gets a little ridiculous, you know? And it's not to say there haven't been really good stories wrapped around this kind of thing. So many people have tried to remove the monstrosity from the monster. It doesn't seem genuine anymore. Like, either make your own monster or commit, I guess. Because I don't think the vampires of today are the first original vampires, and I'm not expecting them to be. I know creativity changes things over time, but can you really call them vampires? When I think vampire, I think monstrosity. I think lethal. I think angry. I think violent. But if you have people who aren't really being violent and they're trying to merge with society, are they really monsters? In our real lives, there are monsters, human monsters, who do terrible things, but there are some people, like Ted Bundy, very highly functional. You would never know he was a monster until it all came out. I don't think it's as simple as pointing at a vampire or an other and saying you're a monster. I think there are things, like I said in the beginning, there are things in people that make them do monstrous deeds. Or rather, no. There are things in people that a part of them wants to do monstrous deeds, wants to be a monster, and would be okay with, and this is the thing about monstrosities, is human monstrosities, is that they start little, they start by stealing a candy bar, and end by stealing millions from a bank. They start by whispering about a friend, and they end up destroying a marriage. They start by fantasizing about defending themselves, or hurting other people, or something like that, and they end up killing people. Like, it always starts small, and it becomes much worse. And that's why we need to draw a solid line about what's a monster and what's not. Because we don't want people to fantasize about being a monster. It's fun to fantasize about, but what does that do to your psyche? What is the net benefit? And if you are saying, yes, I want to be a monster, why? Why do you want to be that? Why do you want to create negatives everywhere when positives are so beautiful? When life is so beautiful? If someone was kind to you right now, wouldn't you say, I like that, and I want it to happen again? So why wouldn't you do it for other people?
Their monstrousness is part of their being. Humans, by and large, will still see them that way no matter what they do. Their attempts at assimilation are often painful, embarrassing, debasing, and ultimately futile.
If you're talking about a fictitious monster, yeah. Like how some people try to domesticate animals and they end up dying or getting hurt or having to put them down because they're wild. They have an animalistic instinct. But humans, I believe, are different than that. At least slightly. They have animalistic instincts, loosely. But they have more than that.
In Interview with a Vampire, when Louis is first turned into a vampire, he tries to avoid hunting humans. He resists his desire for blood. When Ginger Fitzgerald from the movie Ginger Snaps begins turning into a werewolf, she's just as hesitant to accept the changes brought on by lycanthropy. They don't want to be monsters. That doesn't change the fact that they are.
Can you name me some examples in the real world of people who don't want to be monsters but are becoming some? The only case I can think of is kids who have gone through trauma. Bad things have happened to them, and they are lashing out. And depending on how they lash out, that could be monstrous. The solution to that monstrosity, right, is treating them like a human. And many times it pulls them right back. Or sometimes they go through their entire youth being monstrous, and then finally, whether it's through discipline or through getting consequences, they find their way back. Because they realize the negatives are not worth it.
Trying to follow the rules is kind of pointless when the rules are arbitrary and unfair.
Yeah.
Maybe in these cases, when your monstrousness isn't a function of what you do, but who you are, it's better to embrace it.
This part, because I know human psychology a little bit, was incredibly dangerous. And I'm not blaming Foundry for it, because he's following the logical line, and he's doing well, for the most part. But the problem is, think about someone who already thinks they're a monster, and you just told them, you can't help it, become one. I am saying the way people might receive that, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have posted this either. I'm glad you posted this, and I want this to stay up. But when someone who has mentally got a problem, and they're like, I'm a monster, I've done terrible things, even if whether it's terrible or not, you say that, and immediately like, oh, well, I can't stop it, might as well just go further into it. I'd say a lot of people are like that, where they tend to lean into what makes them monstrous or evil, then away from. They need a good reason, a strong reason, to lean away from that.
The monster is more than just a fictional villain archetype.
Right.
It's a didactic device that shows you your own social boundaries.
I like this.
It tells you what to do by telling you what not to do.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot easier to come to a consensus on what's wrong if you can create a communal image of what wrong looks like.
Exactly.
That kind of consensus is also very susceptible to bias, though. What happens when you all agree on something wrong? What if you find threats where there aren't any? What if you end up stoking fear around something that is, in the end, pretty harmless?
I completely agree. He's right. A lot of people have created rules, created lines between human and monster, and subjugated people to violence because they thought that. How do you deal with that? I would say the standards. Because usually when people get away with something like this or try to do something like this, what they normally do is they start changing the standards of society, which you just talked about, to create a number of social contracts and a number of beliefs and philosophical ideas that allow them to get away with evil. Then all you have to do is look at the societies who got away with evil, or tried to, and compare them to the ones who aren't, if you can find any. And compare them to the positive sides, right? The problem is, you have to have people agree on what a monster is. And I would actually love, if you guys say so, I would love to create a video on monster versus human and just do my own version of this. Like, not that he didn't do great, but to go deeper with my own examples, my own principles, and stuff like that. Just let me know.
How do you benefit from othering people based on the flimsy criteria of personal taste and familiarity?
Per history's example, they could get resources, land, maybe they just don't like them because their heart is twisted and they really want to do evil on people, which is a lot more common than you think. People love to do evil on people all the time. Could be simply they just slighted them. Like, that's how feuds start. A lot of feuds are like, oh, you looked at me funny, and then I stole your pig, and then I killed your pig, and then I killed all your pigs, then I killed your sister, cousin, then I killed your cousin, and then you killed my sister, and then you killed my parents, and then I set your house on fire, and then it just never ends. It's a cycle of violence. So, that kind of thing.
Chances are, if you exist, someone out there will consider you a monster for some reason. Even if you follow the rules perfectly, which is certainly tempting to try, you'll never be able to do it perfectly enough. You will always be a monster to someone.
Just because you will always be a monster to someone does not mean you should let it affect you. Does not mean you should not pursue those good things. This is why I love Christianity, because it directly fights this. It says, even if someone, like, turn the other cheek. Pretty much everyone's heard that. At least they used to. Love your enemies. That makes no sense to people's natural mind. Why would you love your enemy? They're your enemy. But when people start loving enemies, when people start doing good even if they've been wronged, how much more net positive good in the world is there because of that? Right? Don't let people change you because of their actions. You should be pushing to good things even if people wrong you. That's why I love Christianity, and it's the best, because there are no others. The Bible says directly, love everyone. And if you define what love is, it says, don't treat them wrongly. Don't hurt them. Don't lie to them. Don't steal. Don't do all of these things that would be considered wrong. And if you put all of these into a society, you end up, if they follow them, you end up with a society that is a giant net positive. And that's what America kind of used to be. Still is a little bit. But people aren't perfect. And I realize that's not quite applicable to real life. But that's the concept. And that's the standard. That's why it's up here. That's what's important, is like finding something that allows you to improve yourself and find something to anchor you.
About Let the Right One In is that it doesn't provide a clear, categorical definition of what it means to be a monster. Oscar is a tormented boy.
I would have to disagree with that. And the reason why, and I'm not blaming him for this, he's still making a good point. The reason why is because the reason people in film and shows put out horror films, and they put out suspense films and action films, and they always write in a villain, is because they know what lines people draw in their head. They know when they watch that little girl eat people that it's wrong. Some might fantasize, some might excuse, but in the end, if that happened to their mother, they wouldn't be happy about it. Same thing about the little boy. Everyone understands that boy is going through some tragic stuff and needs help, and no one will help him. I mean, I haven't seen the show, so I don't know. But, so they're like, oh my gosh, he defended himself. Good for him. But it was violent. So that's the thing we really need to consider, is like, yes, they're trying to blur the lines a little bit, but at the same time, they've created lines. I like what, is it Frank Turek said? Give me a second. So Geisler said, you need to know noumena in order to prove phenomenon. What that means is, if you don't know what something normally is, you can't tell if it's not normal. If you don't know that vampires aren't bad, you're never going to understand why this show is so heart-wrenching. If you don't think killing is bad, this show will not bother you. If you don't think vampires are some evil monster, then this whole analogy that he's making of monster versus human falls flat. And then it goes down to the whole argument before about standards and which one matters more and how that works between the two and how you're supposed to adjust society based upon standards that have a net benefit. Then what's the net benefit? Is the net benefit that you get more resources from your neighbor when you kill them all? That's not good, because it's net negative on life. What's your standard?
Boy who fantasizes about violence. Ellie is a tormented girl who has no choice but to engage in it. Oscar can pass in society as a person, but is still ostracized and bullied for things beyond his control. Ellie will never pass as a person, no matter what she does. In the end, all they have is that they aren't monsters to each other.
I love TaleFoundry. He's excellent. There's a lot of ideas I've heard from him that go great. This idea is great. There's a lot of really good points. I was really happy to look at the video. I would like to know if you guys would like for me to kind of create some sort of talking points for me to talk about. I would do like a live and just ramble about it, and people could listen to me or not, whatever they wanted, but I don't have enough followers to do lives. I really love this guy. Go and watch this video. Think for yourself. Comment on his video. Let me know what you guys like. I want to hear any points that you have. And I didn't get to explain everything. So if you have questions, if I get enough questions, I might do it anyway because I feel like it. I will do a monster versus human diagram and list of things and traits because this is the kind of thing I've been learning about recently. And I would love to make this video for people to share and for people to understand. Thank you for watching. I hope, honestly, that you watch this video. I know it's only 20 minutes. It's just over 15 minutes. I think you can spare 15 minutes. And I hope you liked the content that I've made because I've tried to do gaming content, but I'm trying to switch over to this more moral stuff. Because honestly, this is the stuff I care about. And I could talk about this stuff for hours, which I will condense nicely for you to fit into 15 minutes. I hope. Probably not. This video is going to be like a half an hour at least because I have an hour and a half of footage. Thank you for watching, and I appreciate you all. God bless.